What's going on, guys? We are back, and you can already tell what we got going on. Brand new Cappy Army video. Man, I don't know how this guy does it, dude. He releases some extremely high quality content really quick lately. I mean, just in general, but lately it just feels like it's been insane. So this says U.S. Black Ops in Iran or Iran are legitimately insane. I don't even know what to expect on this, man. But I'm excited because every Cappy video I learn a ton of stuff that I had no idea about or knew very little about. So before we jump into it, please show some love on Cappy's channel. Also like, share, subscribe on this channel. Appreciate all the new people here and all the existing and OGs of the channel. I love you. Thank you for continuing to share and like and do and hype up the videos. Appreciate that. If you want a t-shirt, we've got another week left of the two exclusives, the Flamingos over Moscow, which is perfect because Moscow's getting bombed as we speak, or it just did. And we have the 4th of July special, the American for Ukraine, if you want one too. Uncensored content is in the Discord for our members. That's all I got, guys. Let's jump into it.
America's Black Ops against Iran. The full extent of America's Black Ops against Iran are now just starting to be revealed by recently declassified documents and first-hand accounts from the actual troops involved in the fighting. These missions range from covert action against Iran's proxy network in Lebanon and Syria to the shocking time when American and Iranian special forces temporarily found themselves fighting on the same team. These hidden operations between these two countries completely explains why they ended up exploding into a case of full-blown war. It's affecting us to this day. So today's video is like an iceberg format, except we're skipping straight to the bottom where the most insane missions and most deeply questionable foreign policy decisions live. Joint Special Operations Command first started stealthily working along the Iranian border after the US invasion of Iraq. This is when Delta Force first made connections with the Asaish Kurdish intelligence organization, who already had multiple spies that were reporting on Iran's nuclear program from the inside. If you don't have an intelligence network already set up, just borrow someone else's. So this gave the United States...
Hey, let me know in the comments what unit from the United States military you think is the most elite. For a long time, especially when I was growing up, man, it was the SEALs, the SEAL teams, especially after the Osama bin Laden raid, like SEAL Team 6, and then they got a lot of flack because a lot of the guys started doing podcasts and stuff like that afterwards, and there was some information that there was some discrepancies in the information, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, lately we've been seeing Delta Force go ham, and a lot of people think Delta is number one. So, and then we got is it MARSOC? Or, yeah, MARSOC. Marine Special Forces, like Marine Raiders and stuff, and those guys are just legendary. I don't know if that's called MARSOC, let me know. But let me know who you think the most top-tier, elite American military outfit is. I'm going Delta.
The inside skinny on the nuclear situation in Iran. So as a task force officer said, quote, "The guys with the greatest access and placement were the Kurds. They delivered some huge targets to us. They were a group of folks that could transit the border, and they were willing to help us out on what we wanted to do with Iran," said a special operations officer to Sean Naylor, who wrote the great book Relentless Strike. It was the start of a long abusive relationship between the US Special Forces and the Kurdish forces. These are the same Kurds that the CIA tried to arm in 2026 in the war against Iran to start a ground invasion there. And we'll see the Black Ops campaign against Iran rapidly evolves from here over the years. On a bus ride through a Syrian neighborhood in 2007, a lithium battery catches fire in a man's pocket. It's a small battery, but he can't risk anyone else on the bus seeing it. He's not actually supposed to be there, nor is the small recording device that the battery is attached to. You see, he's actually an American on a black operation as part of Task Force 17, which is a highly classified unit that combines the covert intelligence capabilities of the CIA with the tactical capabilities of Joint Special Forces Command. TF-17 was
Dude, this is the coolest stuff to me. Oh my god.
Tasked with the crucial mission to save US soldiers by stopping the flow of sophisticated Iranian weapons and tactics to the insurgents in Iraq. Really, just the type of shit that would make you want to say hua unironically. The Quds Force, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' covert action force, was the head of the snake in that regard, directing a vast proxy network arming Iraqi insurgents with deadly new types of IEDs called explosive form penetrators. And those armor-piercing IEDs would eventually claim the lives of over 600 US soldiers over the course of the US mission in Iraq. While the insurgents themselves also drove sectarian violence that killed many times more Iraqis. That meant Task Force 17's operational mandate meant hunting down top-ranking members of the notorious Quds force wherever they might hide, including across the border in Syria and Iran itself. Apparently, Iran's answer to plausible deniability was to manufacture the bomb, then train the bomber, then fund the network, and then act surprised when everyone noticed. The man on the bus is part of TF-17's Team Orange, the code name for the signals intelligence specialists within the unit. They often dressed in civilian clothing, and you would never even recognize them. He's returning from a spy mission with crucial data about the movements of Hezbollah fighters into Iraq, one of the largest and most battle-hardened Iranian proxy militias. If his cover gets blown and he's captured by the Syrian authorities, he's well aware that the United States government will disavow any and all knowledge of him and his mission and may never even come to rescue him. But before we dive deeper into that, today we're going to analyze a story about the Iran war using this episode's partner, Ground News. During delicate ceasefire negotiations, U.S. officials actually warned Iran that Israel might target their top negotiators in order to disrupt the diplomatic process. Ground News hits me with the fast, objective facts up front, pulled from various sources, including podcasts on the topic. So Israeli fighter jets were detected near Iran's negotiators' return flights. Israel was skeptical of the talks, and killing negotiators is a tactic that the IDF has used before in the past against Hamas. But my favorite thing about Ground News is their insights tools. So it tells me that of 178 different sources that covered the topic, it was evenly covered by the left and the right. There was bipartisan interest in the story, that means. Then it tells me which were the most factual. So piecing together these stories isn't easy because a lot of times there's a lot of agendas, but Ground most factual.
This is one of the coolest things that any of these news apps has done, is show the bias distribution. So you can see, even though I may not agree with some of it, but CNN is more in the center, which is wild to me. And then Fox is not even on there. You would expect Fox to be on the far right, but still very cool to kind of get an idea. So if you're just watching Breitbart, for example, that orange circle, that's all you watch, you know that you are only consuming Republican biased news, and vice versa if you're watching any of the ones on the far left.
So piecing together these stories isn't easy because a lot of times there's a lot of agendas, but Ground News gathers global coverage in one place, making research 1,000 times easier for me. We're offering you guys 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use. Just click the link in the description or go to groundnews.com/Cappy or scan the QR code up here if you want a better understanding of the world. Just give Ground News a shot. Describing what he did next, a former officer of the Special Missions Unit recalled he just held his pants out, and it was just like burning the tar out of them as he's riding the bus out of there. The stakes were so high for a covert mission like this that the unnamed US spy would rather burn his dick off than break cover. There are moments when military service asks you to make sacrifices. Mine mostly involved sacrificing sleep, my functioning knees, and pretending that powdered MRE eggs were actually food. This guy was ready to slow cook his own thigh to protect classified recorders. Since these cross-border operations were so sensitive, the CIA case officers often didn't even know the identities of the operatives that they were working with. Quoting again from a former officer with knowledge of the operation, the chief of station, the ambassador, will know they're in there, and maybe the chief ops in the station, and that's about it. Syrian intelligence is really good. They're looking for spies all the time. The equipment and techniques at work in Syria and Iran missions were so advanced, the US couldn't risk recruiting locals to do the job like the CIA normally does. Instead, JSOC used their own in-house specialists assigned to Team Orange. This was a huge operational risk. So the operation was as black ops as it gets. Extra black, hold the ops. In the book Relentless Strike, journalist Sean Nair describes that even if the officers were discovered, they were strictly forbidden from ever revealing they were Americans and to stick to their cover story no matter what. That's not to say that they were disposable assets, and JSOC took special precautions to ensure the integrity of the operation as much as possible. Team Orange officers would be operating in areas where Israeli intelligence operatives had been captured just weeks prior. So JSOC made sure to understand how and why the Israelis had been discovered before sending in the American Team Orange for another assignment. I was wondering when our good friends in Mossad were going to show up. Please don't assassinate me, Netanyahu. Task Force 17 also conducted an unspecified number of operations inside of Iran itself, linking up with anti-regime rebel groups to give the IRGC a taste of their own destabilization medicine. Delta Force, SEALs, and CIA officers established especially good relations with the Kurds during these operations, and built intelligence networks that are still providing vital information to this day. Despite several close calls like the burning battery incident, the risky intelligence operations in Syria were a success, enabling JSOC to map the routes that Hezbollah and other jihadist fighters used to move from Aleppo and Damascus through the Euphrates River Valley and into Iraq. Team Orange identified Abu Ghadia as the main al-Qaeda leader, facilitating the migration of jihadist fighters across Syria. But the US State Department couldn't lobby the Syrian government to deal with him.
So I wonder if these CIA operators look Middle Eastern at all, right? Otherwise, how would you blend in? How would you just be on a bus and just be like this, vanilla face American and nobody notices?
Directly, without revealing the fact that American intelligence was operating in the country. Instead, the State Department counterterrorism coordinator leaned on the surrounding Arab countries to put their own pressure to deal with Ghadia on their behalf, persuading the Iraqi intelligence service to quote-unquote leak some of their own intelligence on the guy to the Assad regime. Nothing says stable international order quite like one intelligence service asking another government to leak information to a third government so that everyone can pretend not to know who wants whom dead. This approach only half worked though. The General Intelligence Directorate, the Syrian intelligence agency, actually wanted Ghadia alive where they could keep a close eye on him since it gave them insight into anti-government rebel groups and their movements within their own country. The GID resisted calls to eliminate Ghadia for months, but eventually relented and figured he was more trouble than he was actually worth. So it was time to smoke him. The Assad regime let the US government know via back channels that they would look the other way if Ghadia just so happened to wind up dead under mysterious circumstances in their territory, at least politically. The Syrian military was another story though, and they weren't in the loop on all this back channel spy stuff. They would still respond to any attempted border crossings with lethal force. But what fun is it if there isn't at least some chance that you're going to get shot doing a mission? So the American JSOC unit had to act quickly, but quietly. Exactly what US Special Ops soldiers are best at. Syria's military at the time was still strong and had a robust air defense network, but it was all pointed toward Israel and Turkey. Mission planners at the American JSOC unit estimated that they had about 90 minutes once the assault team crossed the border before any Syrian response could cause trouble. Barely enough time to watch a rom-com. It was up to the top pilots of the 160th SOAR to get the team in and out before that happened. On October 28, 2008, a spy within Ghadia's inner circle reported that the target was staying at an isolated safe house just 15 minutes from the border. It was go time. Sources don't specify exactly who made up the assault team, but it seems likely that it was Delta Force that took the lead. As soon as the Black Hawk helicopters touched down, the assaulters charged the safe house, firing on the guards as they moved. Within 90 seconds, they were inside the building, with between 6 and 12 enemy fighters already neutralized, including Ghadia himself. They gathered whatever intel that they could find, loaded up Ghadia's body, and were back in friendly airspace before any Syrian forces even knew what was happening. Delta Force, in and out before any international incident or your money back. But that was only the beginning of the Black Ops campaign against Iran, because in 2003, US Special Forces received a shocking intelligence report that Iran was sheltering a little man named Saad bin Ladina, who was a senior al-Qaeda leader, and the intel stated that he was living inside a...
He's a senior al-Qaeda leader, and he looks like he's 11 with a prepubescent mustache.
comfortably, almost country club style facility in downtown Tehran. Exile in luxury. General Stanley McChrystal wanted proof, though. The original mission was legitimately insane to get that proof on this fact-finding mission. They had to secretly enter Iran, locate the detention facility, vacation facility really, and then confirm whether Saad bin Laden was inside and then leave the country without starting an international crisis. Too easy, huh? JSOC Advanced Force Operations Cell studied this problem and discovered something kind of surprising. Turned out any old American could actually just drive up to the Iranian border, show a passport, and receive instantly a 10-day tourist visa almost immediately. Terrorists hate this one simple loophole. Applying through an Iranian consulate, however, would have been much riskier because officials can conduct a proper background investigation and find out that they have ties to the US intelligence. But apparently, Iran's border security philosophy was considerably less vetting for whoever just shows up. Inshallah, am I right? Even with that vulnerability, though, planners estimated it would take at least a year to construct any kind of convincing cover identities, or what are called legends, for their operatives, backstories for them. But concerns over Iran's nuclear program was quickly growing. So the objective shifted from locating those al-Qaeda prisoners in the luxury resorts to determining whether suspected sites were producing fissile material for nuclear weapons. Special Operations Command sometimes has ADD when it comes to catching terrorists or going after nuclear weapons. So by spring 2004, Team Orange selected a two-person male and female team and built cover identities that were strong enough to survive scrutiny from an Iranian consulate. Like, are they there for construction work? Are they there because they're married and they're on vacation? These are the kind of cover stories that they might build. The risky, sensitive mission required the highest level approval from JSOC, the CIA, and finally, President George Bush himself. It was a nightmare of a chain of command paperwork that was involved, but the operatives got approval and they flew commercially into a major Iranian city. They checked into a hotel and they spent several days traveling by taxi around suspected nuclear facilities, the kind of violation of Iran's sovereignty that makes you just want to blow a whistle. They determined that they could get close enough to collect soil samples that might reveal nuclear activity, but they didn't take one because the mission was only a proof of concept to see if they could enter Iran and escape without drawing attention. Demonstrating this was huge, and Bush personally debriefed them. The US would later exploit this vulnerability of Iran's in assassinating several of Iran's nuclear scientists, murking them left and right. Within Iraq itself, though,
Dude, imagine being a CIA assassin. Whoa, what a cool job, dude.
American soldiers were still taking heavy losses from insurgent attacks. 2007 was a particularly dangerous year for US soldiers in Iraq, especially in the so-called Triangle of Death just south of Baghdad. And on May 10th, a particularly brazen insurgent ambush against the military outpost in the Triangle killed 4 American soldiers and captured another 3. The 4th Battalion of the 10th Mountain Division had already suffered 18 KIA by then. The May 10th attack was the final straw. Something had to be done. US Special Forces launched a campaign against the Quds force so secretive that even Congress didn't know about it. Task Force 17 was the answer. Task forces like TF-17 are unique operational structures within the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, that blur the lines between military unit and intelligence agencies. They are special forces / intelligence daywalkers. CIA case officers worked side by side with Army Rangers, Green Berets, and Delta Force operators on a much more integrated level that could pursue targets across borders. Task Force 17 also enlisted the help of the British MI6 intelligence service and the famed SAS for some of their operations. I was an E4, so my experience with interagency operations mostly involved being told to move a box from one truck to another that had already been moved twice. Task Force 17 was operating a slightly higher level, though. Their order came from the very top. The increasing evidence in 2007 of a link between the Iranian Quds Force officers and deadlier insurgent attacks led President George W. Bush to unleash JSOC on Iranian personnel. We will interrupt the flow of support from Iran and Syria, seek out and destroy the networks providing advanced weaponry and training to their enemies in Iraq. During a typical afternoon in Baghdad, a Predator drone orbits above the Shia quarter, nicknamed Sadr City. The suburb is buzzing with activity, much more than usual. The drone operators from Task Force 17 move in for a closer look. Holy shit, It's Soleimani, the intelligence officer shouts. It's General Qassem Soleimani himself, the commander of Iran's notorious Quds force, being welcomed into Baghdad like he's a celebrity. It was like someone was welcoming Obama to the streets of Sadr City. It was electric, said one officer. At that moment, Task Force 17 faced a crucial choice. On the one hand, TF-17's entire reason for existence was to counter Iran's influence in Iraq. General Soleimani, as the head of Iran's covert action force, was the head of the snake in that regard. The orbiting Predator drone could neutralize the commander of the proxy network here and now. But there's a massive catch. Soleimani is not only a high-profile officer in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, but massively popular among the Iraqi Shia population. Any strike against him, especially in the middle of Sadr City, risked undermining the fragile Shia majority government of Iraq and igniting a mass uprising against the American presence in the country. Worse yet, the Pentagon couldn't predict how Iran would react to the elimination of one of their top generals. With the US military already stretched thin, fighting insurgencies in Iraq and Afghanistan, an all-out war with Iran at that point could end in disaster. A CIA officer actually recalled about the mission, saying, "We were asked for our assessment of what would be the fallout, and we said the Iranians would see this act as inflammatory. The Bush folks decided that escalating things would not be worth it and moved on." Sometimes the most consequential decision is recognizing that a target can be hit and then choosing not to hit it. US intelligence identified multiple groups of fighters slipping into Iraq using hidden networks like the one in Syria. These weren't just war tourists. We're talking about experienced militants from US designated terrorist groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and other well-established Iranian proxy forces.
Dude's wearing Marpat. What's going on with that? Hezbollah's wearing Marine Corps with the belly too.
Task Force 17 was connecting the dots. When America wants someone black bagged into a legally questionable CIA black site prison halfway around the world, they will go to great lengths to get it done. The charismatic leader of the Quds force, General Qassem Soleimani, was coordinating these insurgent groups. He was driving violence among Iraqis themselves along ethnic and religious fault lines. His goal was to establish a Shia-dominated Iraq that was subservient to the Grand Ayatollah in Iran. And it looked like he might succeed. Sadr City, a suburb of Baghdad that was the nexus for Shia political support in Iraq, quickly landed in Task Force 17's sights. As a former U.S. Army Ranger officer assigned to TF-17 recalled, it came down from the top. Once we started recovering EFPs in Sadr City that were stamped from Iranian manufacturing facilities. When you see a stamp that says made in China, you know it's made cheap. When you see a stamp that says made in Iran, you know it'll probably explode. Some of TF-17's operations have been revealed to the public, but many are still highly classified. The reason we know...
Have any of you guys heard of Task Force 17? I never have. We're going to have to make this a two-part video, by the way. We'll keep it going halfway, and then we'll finish it in the second part.
About their work at all is thanks to piecing it together from news reports, quotes from actual veterans themselves, and largely from Sean Naylor's book, Relentless Strike. Naylor interviewed the primary sources to create the most detailed account of the history and inner workings of JSOC to date. The reason for all this secrecy comes from TF-17's operational mandate, straight from the US president, to hunt politically sensitive Iranians who had proven quote-unquote untouchable. Exactly how politically sensitive these targets were was illustrated by an incident in 2009 of April when an unnamed Iranian businessman arrived in the Baghdad International Airport. As he got off the plane from Tehran and stepped out to find a taxi, he held up his cell phone to make a call as usual. Task Force 17 signals intelligence officers were waiting nearby and intercepted the call. They immediately used the man's digital signature to confirm his identity as a senior officer in the Quds force. That was their man, and a squad of Army Rangers assigned to TF-17 swooped in on unmarked pickup trucks, surrounded the Iranian officer. "Are you guys Israelis?" the man asked, completely unfazed by half a dozen rifles pointed at him. When the puzzled Ranger squad leader asked why he thought that, the Quds Force officer replied, simply, "Because surely the Americans aren't stupid enough to detain me." Joke's on him, we were stupid enough to detain him. His cavalier attitude represents the incredible influence that the Quds Force commanded in Iraq at the time. Iran had many friends in high places within the Iraqi government. Whoever the Quds Force couldn't bribe they would threaten with their vast network of proxy militias. While Shia militias were the natural allies of the theocratic Iranian regime, the Quds Force campaign militias were the natural allies of the
Dude, what what is this?
theocratic
I mean, he's got the Somali fire, but it's like just into the air. Like what?
Iranian regime. The Quds Force campaign to destabilize Iraq also supported Sunni insurgents. Look, it was basically a giant clusterfuck with factions vying for power. As long as an insurgent group vowed to kill Americans, the Quds Force had guns, money, and training on offer. The Iranians detained by Task Force 17 on that day was a high-ranking officer in Department 1000, aka the Ramazan Corps. This unit ran Quds Force and insurgent operations in Iraq. But strangely, he was traveling with a diplomatic passport approved by the Iraqi government itself. He was one of the quote-unquote untouchables that I mentioned earlier. The group of high-ranking Quds Force officers whose complex network of political connections shielded them from direct action, until now. Task Force 17 identified 3 primary means of accomplishing their mission against Iranian influence in Iraq: kinetic targeting through kill or capture missions, use captured intelligence to enable non-kinetic pressure against key Shia leaders, and it isolates Iraqi proxies from their Quds Force commanders. Despite an uphill battle against both American and Iraqi political friction, Task Force 17 soon had their next targets. NSA intelligence officers identified 2 brothers, the Khazali brothers, as the leaders of the League of Righteous Militia Group. While political connections meant TF-17 couldn't officially go after one of the brothers, the other one wasn't covered by that order. You can only jump through so many diplomatic loopholes to avoid JSOC's teeth. Intelligence pinpointed Laith at a location called Objective Senada in the city of Basra, and TF-17 moved fast. Navy SEALs teamed up with the G Squadron of the British SAS to surround and capture Laith without a fight. As luck would have it, one of the other militia members captured in the raid was the supposedly untouchable Kais, 2-for-1 special. But that's not all the task force found on the raid. The swift action meant that the assault team secured a treasure trove of intelligence that directly linked Quds Force support to a deadly attack in Karbala 2 months prior. The intel allowed US forces to eliminate leaders behind the Karbala's attack. It also turns out one of the other captured militia fighters was a Hezbollah fighter under orders directly from the Quds Force. He'd travel from Lebanon to train Iraqi insurgents using his own vast experience fighting Israel. Thanks to that revelation, Task Force 17 was able to persuade the Iraqi Prime Minister to revoke Khazali's protections. This finally cracked the shield that had kept Kais free, and he was thrown in prison along with his brother. Further operations and raids over the next 5 months bagged more Iranian operatives embedded within the Iraqi insurgent groups. Unmasking Quds Force commanders created plenty of tension within Iraq's political sphere, though, forcing General Soleimani to put more distance between his lieutenants and the proxy militias. The extra layer of distance meant the Quds Force had to rely more and more on Iraqi intermediaries to keep the heat from Task Force 17 off their backs. TF-17 was having a real and immediate impact on the flow of Iranian weapons into Iraq. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. At this level of special ops, it never is, and something is bound to go wrong sooner or later. On the night of October...
That's probably the perfect place to end it. Dude, this is so cool. I don't even have much to say because I'm just so... I'm just locked in on what's going on here. Super cool. So please like, share, subscribe to Cappy Stuff and on this channel as well. And come back for part 2. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.